Hello, my name is Ivy. I am the occultist on YouTube and on Instagram, and today we're going to be talking about ancestral magic and ancestral veneration. But before we begin, let's do a quick patron shout out. So if you don't already know, I just announced a new patron membership for this YouTube channel. I'll link it down below in the description box if you are interested in becoming a patron. I literally announced it yesterday. So as of today, I will list off my patrons here. Thank you so much for your support. If you signed up to be a patron after filming this video, I will have your name listed in the next video. Thank you so much to Jessica, Scotty, Mika, Rebecca, Helena, Hellhound J, Amy, Delightful Ambience, Kelly, and Andrea. And if I have mispronounced any names, please tell me. I want to make sure I get my pronunciations right. I do not want to be that person. So without further ado, let's get into the depths of ancestral magic and ancestral veneration. Let's cover some basics first when it comes to working with your ancestors, either in a veneration sense or in a magical sense. This whole video is going to be based heavily on my personal experiences, my personal gnosis. None of us know what's on the other side, so there are going to be some disagreements here. And if you do disagree with my perspective on certain things, that's absolutely fine. Take what resonates, leave what doesn't, but I'm hoping that you find this information helpful to your own ancestral practice. If you don't agree with some of the ideals in this video, then maybe just take some of these tips and tricks, mold it to your own ancestral magic practice that fits your personal belief system. Let's talk about ancestral magic versus ancestral veneration, because I see these two terms kind of used interchangeably, and they're not necessarily the same thing. They can bleed into each other a little bit, but I really want to get a distinct definition for each one. Ancestral veneration is where you are remembering and honoring your ancestors. Ancestral magic is where you are using that ancestral energy in your spells, in your rituals, to gain a desired effect. So with ancestral magic, you can use the energy and the power of all your ancestors behind you to create talismans, to create amulets, to create protection spells, to really do whatever it is that you would like to do in your magical practice. So a lot of people, when they're discussing ancestral magic, what they really mean is ancestral veneration. And again, I'm not the vocabulary police. People can do whatever they want in their own magical practices, but I do think that they are two distinct practices that can, bleed together depending on the person, but getting that clear definition is going to be helpful moving forward in this video. Now, there are some excellent times of the year to work with your ancestors. Typically, people will start around Samhain or the fall time once you're entering maybe even the winter solstice. Once you start going into the darker half of the year, that's when a lot of people start working with their ancestors again, although you can absolutely work with your ancestors year-round. I do. I definitely work with my ancestors year-round, but I do a lot more ancestral magic when it is around Samhain time, when it's starting to get a little darker, the veil is becoming thin. And you also might want to consider working with your ancestors on a full moon as well, when your intuition is heightened. Although some people may argue that a dark moon, like the day, either a new moon or the day right before a new moon, is best because that is when it's darkest. Really just kind of play around with a bunch of different times and see what works best for you and your communication with your ancestors. Some people may also choose to use birthdays as a way to work with ancestors. So either your own birthday, signifying you coming into this world and leaving the spirit world, or you could use a specific birthday of the person that you were trying to work with. Again, whatever works for you. Who are your ancestors? Let's talk about it because there's a lot of controversy that surrounds this question. Some people believe that ancestors are only biological in the sense that our DNA from this physical vessel must be tied to that person in order to consider them an ancestor. And I actually don't personally believe that. If you do believe that, then that is fine. That is your own paradigm and I respect that. But for me, I think that ancestors is in a much broader sense, especially considering that we are all connected as a species. So there are a couple different types of ancestors that you can work with. And I think this is particularly helpful to talk about, especially if you are a person that does not have a good relationship relationship with your own family, your own biological family, that is, you can definitely work with ancestors that are not necessarily biologically related to you, but they are an ancestor in a different sense. So let's talk about all the different types of ancestors. And I mentioned this briefly in my Protection Magick video towards the end when I talked about building your astral army. I talked briefly about ancestral veneration and magic. So I'm going to link that video down below if you wanted to check out the Protection Magick video. And for those that have seen it, some of this might be redundant, so, you know, bear with me. Now, the first type of ancestor is the traditional one that we all think of, and this is either specific biological ancestors or your entire ancestral line, biologically speaking. Now, the second type of ancestors is not something that people would really consider, and this is not something that I just made up myself. This is something I learned a long time ago, and so I'm sure other people practice this as well. This isn't totally off personal gnosis, but it is off personal experience, and that is the idea of territorial ancestors. So territorial ancestors are people that you are not biologically related to, but they are the people that were on the land that you currently occupy. So let's say, for example, I'm American. I did not choose to be here. I did not choose to come over here and be on the land that I currently live on. But I'm here now, and I want to make the best of it, and I want to honor the people that lived on this land, that took care of this land prior to me being here. And so working with a territorial ancestor in this way helps to have a relationship with them, saying, you used to take care of this land at that time. Now it is my turn. It is my turn to take care of this land to the best of my ability, to do right by you and to honor you as much as I can. And I feel like this gives us a great opportunity for healing, or at least starting the journey to healing, right? It's really good to honor those territorial ancestors, and if you build a good relationship, you can absolutely ask them for assistance within your protection magic, you know, protecting your property and your home. But you're not just doing this to get stuff, right? You're not just doing this to ask them to do things for you. You're doing this to honor them. The third type of ancestors are called archetypal ancestors, and these are personally my favorite and the ones that I personally work with the most. So in my personal perception, we are so much more than our physical bodies. Our souls transcend time and space, according to my own personal beliefs, that is. And if you personally believe in reincarnation, this might be a type of ancestor you want to consider as well. Archetypal ancestors are people that you resonate with on a deep soul level. So let's say, for example, you are a poet, and there's a specific famous poets, historically speaking, that you just really resonate with their story. You feel like you're vibing at the same frequency as them. Not necessarily that you've been reincarnated from them, although if that's your belief, then, you know, whatever works for you. But you may feel this familial spirit energy where you feel like this is not somebody that I'm biologically related to, but this is a person that I relate to so deeply on a soul level. So for example, all the badass females that lived, you know, in the 16th century or whatever, some of those are going to be my archetypal ancestors, and I really deeply resonate with them. Not all of them, that's an over exaggeration, but you get my point. Archetypal ancestors are also so important because they help us tap into different areas of our psyche, help us connect with different parts of ourselves, and also sometimes heal parts of ourselves. And in this category, let's say you had a godfather or something, and your godfather has passed on. Even though he's not technically biologically related to you, you can absolutely work with him as an ancestor, as that familial spirit. Now, the last type of ancestor that I'm going to mention here is source. And source is the energy in which all ancestors derive from, according to your viewpoints on that, of course, but it is this pool of energy that is all the ancestors, whether it is biological, not biological, whatever you perceive ancestors to be in your own practice, that source is going to be the collection of all of them. So you can choose to just work with source instead of working with very specific ancestors. I'd like to talk about a question that I get quite a bit when people are beginning their ancestral veneration or their ancestral magic journey. There is this question that comes up, and the question is, what if I want to work with an ancestor that doesn't approve of my magical practice? Let's say this person was a Christian or, you know, some other Abrahamic religion. They were heavily against magic and the occult of all sorts, heavily against witchcraft or whatever it is that you practice and identify as. Can you still work with that ancestor, and what does that look like? Now again, this answer is going to be very heavily based on my own personal gnosis, but I do have a situation similar to this that I experienced. What I ultimately ended up learning is that ancestors operate on a higher morality than humans. And oftentimes we want to push our morality and our ethics onto these spiritual beings. But the fact of the matter is they aren't humans anymore. They are ancestors. They have passed to the other side. They have seen other dimensions of time and space that we haven't seen. And so all of those nitty-gritty day-to-day arguments, even if they are big arguments like religion and what one should ethically do or not do, it doesn't matter anymore because they're in a different space. You are in a different space. And so I encourage you to try to heal those wounds if you can. Try to heal that relationship. You might actually find that they are very, very receptive to you. And this kind of goes with disagreements that happened when they were alive as well. So let's say you had a really, really troubling relationship with one of your family members and they passed on, and you want to work with them as an ancestor, but there was a lot of friction in that relationship. There is a certain level of forgiveness with ancestors that I find really, really beautiful, and you can absolutely gain some closure on a situation like that. So again, in my experience, my perceptions of what has happened in my own magical practice, it seems that trying to push our own ethical boundaries of what's right and wrong off onto ancestors kind of seems like a moot point because they are so beyond. They have transcended this physical vessel and they're in a different space than they were when they were alive. Let's talk about how to perform ancestral veneration. And this is the part where you are honoring and remembering your ancestors in order to really heal old wounds, or maybe just remember them and honor them because you feel deeply connected to them. You want to establish connection with them again. It's really important to have your ancestors on your side. I mean, technically your ancestors are probably always going to be on your side, but it's important to open the lines of communication by doing this ancestral veneration so that you can receive messages from them, so that you can use them in ancestral magic. Because without this ancestral veneration, where you are honoring them and remembering them, you can't even attempt to do ancestral magic and expect to be successful. So it's good to start with ancestral veneration first. And ancestral veneration can be as easy or as simple as you personally want it to be. It can be as simple as praying to them before you go to bed. It can be as simple as hanging up photos of them. You can learn about them. You can even set up little altars for them and leave offerings. Now, offerings is really kind of tricky because it depends on the ancestor that you're working with. So you're going to want to consider the things that they like, the things they don't like. Maybe they like little trinkets. Maybe they like tea. Maybe they like drinking whiskey when they were alive, and a whiskey offering would be excellent for them. But I would say if you're working with ancestors as a whole, or maybe just like your entire biological line, usually the most popular offerings are coffee, tea, wine, whiskey, mead, tobacco, you know, some of those things that were really actually hard to get when they were alive. Now, this is of course depending on how far back you go with your ancestors, because technically you could even use sugar as an offering as well. Or maybe even some exotic spices, you know, something that was really difficult for them to get when they were alive, that was a novelty that they found really enticing. So definitely brainstorm, do your research, you know, figure out what your ancestors like and what they don't like. And you don't always have to give them things. I have mentioned this in my videos as well, but you can also do this in the form of acts of service. You don't necessarily have to give them things, although I do also want to add that blessed water, or like new moon water or full moon water, you know, some sort of consecrated blessed water is a great offering, and it's free, right? Usually. So it's something sustainable that you can offer them on a regular basis. You can also create a candle for them specifically with herbs or oils that correspond to them that have been anointed around the candle. You can light the candle and do that offering that way. But with acts of service, I think this is really important to know, and I've discussed this in my Dark Goddess Worship video as well. Doing things, physically doing things for your ancestors is so meaningful. So for example, if you're working with territorial ancestors and you want to perform some ancestral veneration, what you would do is clean up the land, take care of it, prune things that need to be pruned, harvest things that need to be harvested. you know, taking care of that land. Or, you know, let's say you're working with biological ancestors and you just had this really kooky, crazy aunt that really just lived her life so carefree, and she was so fun and so vibrant. And so something that you could do specifically for her is to live your life in the most exciting, vibrant way possible. What a better way to honor an ancestor like that than to do the things that they want to see you doing. Cut those toxic people out of your life. Make good choices for yourself. Wear the clothes and be confident. You know, go after your goals and dreams. These are all offerings to your ancestors. You can also just choose to talk about them with other people, to tell stories about them, maybe visit their grave and leave an offering there. But just generally remembering them and honoring them in your daily life is going to make it a lot more sustainable in the long run, so that you can continue to perform this ancestral veneration practice. Let's move on to how you can communicate with your ancestors. There are so many different ways that you can do this, and I will just kind of talk about a few different ways that I personally find effective. I know a lot of people like to use prayer to communicate with their ancestors, but really to get a better two-way conversation, what I like to do is to sit down, cast some sort of sacred space. You know, if you cast a circle or a square or a triangle or whatever you do to create sacred space, just kind of designating that space as an honorary space for you and your ancestors to connect. After casting the space, you call in your ancestors. You can either call them in by specific names, or you can just say, ancestors, I invite you. You know, the invocation or evocation, depending on your viewpoint on that, can be literally whatever you want it to be, but you're just calling them into that space with you. And then from here, what I like to do is perform some sort of divination. So I know a lot of people like to use pendulums for their ancestral communication, and I think pendulums are a great way to communicate. It's not how I personally do it, but I know a lot of people have had success with that. So definitely look into some pendulum work if you're looking for more yes, no, straightforward answers. But my personal preference as a means of communicating with my ancestors is through tarot, because there are certain cards in the tarot, at least the Rider-Waite-Smith version. I don't know about the other versions, but where you have certain cards that really do kind of indicate a yes, and certain cards that do kind of indicate a no. And so I like to sit down with my tarot cards and I will speak out loud to my ancestors and ask them to guide my hands as I pull these tarot cards. And then for me personally, I feel usually like a little warming sensation or like a buzzing sensation when I hover over specific cards. And that tells me that those are the cards that my ancestors want me to pick, because the rest of the cards are giving me dead energy. So I just kind of let them guide my hand over the cards and then stop wherever I feel that sensation. And then I can have more of a two-way conversation. I always start this type of reading with some question like, who are you? Or who are you to me? That way you get a general sense of which ancestor it is that you're actually talking to before you proceed asking other questions, you know, for guidance or whatever it is you're asking for. You can also communicate with your ancestors in your dreams, and this is particularly helpful in lucid dreaming. I love lucid dreaming. I did a whole video on how to do lucid dreaming and how to talk to your ancestors, spiritual guides, deities, or whatever in your dreams. So I'm going to link that video down below just so this video doesn't get so long, but just know that lucid dreaming is another excellent way that you can work on that ancestral communication. You can also go into a deep trance or a deep meditation in order to gain some insight from your ancestors, in order to get those messages or visions a little bit more clearly. So definitely develop a regular practice of meditation. That's going to help you with that. You can also go on a visualization journey. So a lot of people perceive ancestors to live in what's called the lower world. And so there are many guided meditations that you can do either on YouTube or elsewhere that help you travel to the lower world, travel to your ancestors, so you can have conversations with them in these deep meditations. And if you find that you've been working with your ancestors for a little bit and the communication hasn't been great, you haven't been able to get a good response from them, or you just feel like that communication is really weak, what you might want to consider doing is a dedication ceremony. And I actually plan to film my personal dedication ceremony, not all of it because a lot of it is private, but at least the general sense of what I like to do. Every single year around Samhain, I do a full dedication ceremony where I am dedicating myself to my ancestors ancestors. I honor them. I reopen the lines of communication. I mean, really, I work with my ancestors year round, but once a year, I do want to set aside that time to do a full dedication ceremony where I thank them, I give offerings, and then talk about the next year coming up. And I find that doing a dedication ceremony with your ancestors is really helpful for opening up the lines of communication, because some of us, you know, we haven't spoken to our ancestors ever, or maybe we're just starting to talk to them, and it's nice to show up with an offering and a dedication first before asking for stuff, right? I mean, it's kind of considered rude in the spiritual realm just to show up asking some sort of entity for help when you have given them nothing in return. So it's important to dedicate yourself, you know, give those offerings, honor them, remember them, all those things. And doing a more formal dedication ceremony, in my opinion and experience, it really, really helps open up those lines of communication. And now I feel like my relationship is stronger than ever with my ancestors since I started doing that. So once that video is up, I'm not sure when I'll get to that video, but I will link it down below in the description box if you want to check out that ancestral ritual. Now we get into the really fun part. Let's talk about ancestral magic and how to actually use that ancestral energy in your spells and your rituals. Now, this is where you are going to bring them into your space as you were doing your magical working. So some people like to cast circles, some people don't like to cast circles. You definitely need to play around and figure out what works best for you. I will say in my own magical practice, I don't usually cast circles ever, except when I do ancestral magic. That is the one exception, or if I'm working with a deity, where I really do want to cast that sacred space. That way it's a very intimate, safe space for me and my ancestors to work. So I like to cast a circle, invite my ancestors in with some sort of invocation, evocation, again, depending on your views. And that prayer or mantra or whatever can be really whatever you want it to be. It can be as simple as, ancestors, I invite you into this space. Please be here with me. Please accept this offering. It is kind of customary, at least in a lot of traditions that I know of, to bring some sort of offering to the table when you are doing some sort of ancestral magic. So if you're going to ask them for their assistance, it's good to show up with something that they like, just to show that you are respecting them, you are honoring them, you are appreciating them for their assistance in whatever this situation is. So after I cast my sacred space, I call in my ancestors, I give them this offering. My ancestors personally love tea, so we do tea parties quite often. So we will sit down and try different types of tea together. I sound like an insane person, but I don't really care. It works. Now from here, here's the magical portion. And it does require some visualization, so if visualization is not for you, skip this technique. You don't have to do that. But what you are going to do from here is you are going to visualize them entering your body. You are going to invite them into your space. So I like to visualize them standing behind me and walking towards me and stepping into my body, and just visualize those energies intertwining, your own energy mixed with their energy. I would not really recommend this to a beginner. Like if you are just starting out with your magical practice, I would definitely recommend learning how to center, ground, and direct your energy prior to doing any of these techniques that I'm going to talk about right now, because you need to understand what your own energy feels like first before you can start mixing it with other energies and be able to direct it in a way that's going to give you efficient results. So I would not necessarily recommend this to a beginner. Make sure that you know that, centering, grounding, directing techniques first. But if you're past all that point, visualize them entering your body, visualize those energies intertwining, and then from there, as you place your hands over your magical working, or whatever it is that you do for your magic, you would do everything as normal, but visualize that ancestral magic flowing through you and that energy feeding the spell as you go through that spell or ritual. So you really are using the energy and the power from all the ancestors that you have standing behind you. Now, if you are not a person that likes visualization, there are other ways that you can perform ancestral magic. You can petition your ancestors, which this is a lot more transactional. It really is if you give me this, I give you this type of thing. And you could, again, make it as simple or as complex as you want it to be. But when you're petitioning your ancestors, you would essentially sit down, you can cast sacred space if you want to, bring in your ancestors, but you would write down on a piece of paper what it is that you need their assistance with and what you are willing to give them in return. And again, this does not have to be a physical item. This can be an act of service that you know that they would really like you to do. And then afterwards, you throw it into the fire and wait for it to manifest. So you can do petitions that way. It's a lot easier than the visualization technique if you're not a visualizer. Another way that you can bring in your ancestors and do some ancestral magic is by using graveyard dirt, but make sure that you have permission first. It's really considered bad etiquette to just go to a grave and take some dirt without even working with the spirit beforehand, without asking for permission. You might find that your spells backfire, or maybe not, it's just not an effective thing to do. Please make sure you're asking for permission before taking some graveyard dirt. And also be mindful of the type of spell you're using this in as well, because graveyard dirt has its own magical correspondences, and you want to make sure that that's really fitting the spell that you're trying to do. But if you do have a specific biological ancestor, or even an archetypal ancestor or something, you've developed a good relationship with them, you've been doing some ancestral veneration for a while, and you've maybe done some divination to ask them for permission. If you feel that resounding yes, then you can absolutely collect some of that graveyard dirt and use it in a spell as a means of bringing in that ancestral energy. And again, you can get totally creative here. You can create talismans and amulets powered by your ancestors. You can do your whole Protection Magick routine. I did talk about that a lot in the Protection Magick video. I think that video is like 40 minutes long, but it has a lot of different techniques in there if you're interested. There's so many different ways that you can use that ancestral magic in your spell work, and it's just, in my experience, it feels so powerful. So powerful. I definitely recommend doing it. And those are the basics of what I personally believe you need to know when it comes to ancestral veneration and ancestral magic. I am really excited to do additional ancestral magic and veneration videos in the future, but I needed to make this video first, especially for beginners that are just starting to get into the practice. I wanted to make this video so that it's a good starting place for anyone. And then in the future, I hope to make more ancestral magic and ancestral veneration videos that are a lot more specific. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you are interested in supporting me, you really liked this content, consider becoming my patron. I will leave that link down below in the description box, or you can also make a one-time donation to this video as well. A lot of you know that I am in college right now, and college is very expensive. So all the proceeds, all the funds that are raised from this YouTube channel go straight towards my college tuition. Help me pay off massive student loan debts. That would be great. Thanks. I appreciate you all. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'll see you in a video very soon. Bye.